What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show on trade day in the NFL. There's a lot of trade news in the NFL, and there's a lot of news breaking in the NBA as well. There's a 4-game slate. We've got plenty of injuries to still discuss. Mike, how are you on this fine Tuesday?
Doing great. I have a lot of Chase Claypool, so excited to see him in a new situation. But we won't be breaking that down today. There's some big NBA news today we could talk a little bit about.
Yeah, the big NBA news involves the Nets moving on from Steve Nash, a relationship that seemed likely to end at some point this season, given the way the offseason had played out. Obviously, we don't know how that will influence rotations amongst Brooklyn, but it is hard to imagine a scenario that helps the value of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving more than what they have had going, given Nash was willing to play them like 37 to 39 minutes a game. They play tonight on the second night of a back-to-back. We'll see. But I mean, they were playing extremely tight before. I assume things won't change in the very immediate, but it does add a little bit more risk to the situation. We will certainly talk more through it on the premium side of things. From an injury perspective, let's lead with the Nets here. No Ben Simmons, once again. No Seth Curry. Joe Harris is ominously not on the injury report, which was very surprising to me, given he sat out the last back-to-back, one of the games, and played 29 minutes last night, which is a season high by a wide margin. What's your read first on the Joe Harris aspect of things? Sorry, as you're scrolling there, I'm seeing all the Gallagher.
Yeah. I don't know. It's not resizing. Sorry, I'm screwing up there. That's my bad.
The Joe Harris side of things, and then also in terms of still no Seth Curry, no Ben Simmons. Do you expect the rotation to look similarly to what we saw last night?
Yeah, it should be. We don't know. There was actually, in hindsight, the quote about Yuta Watanabe is hilarious because he was asked, because we saw Yuta pick up some pretty big minutes down the stretch, and he was like, "Oh yeah, he reads a scouting report." I'm like, oh my god, that quote's so good now in hindsight. But yeah, I think they like him. He did mention too. I mean, this game was pretty high paced. Mentioned the high minutes. It's Nash, kind of irrelevant, but still worth noting that he said his guys were really tired after the game, which again, it makes sense. You're playing Kyrie Irving 43, Durant really active in his 39 minutes. Got into the paint a little bit. Moved the ball. His defense was everywhere. Joe Harris was chasing Buddy Hield around for 29 minutes and guarded Halliburton. They asked a lot out of him. We saw him steal a few times too. He was, really, really busy. So surprised to see him not even get a probable tag. I think he's probably starting again. Can't imagine why he's not, because he was so effective, and they need his spacing obviously as well too. So yeah, I feel pretty good about his minutes. We'll see if the Nash Yuta Watanabe thing carries over with Jacques Vaughn. I would think it is, because they don't really seem to like Dameron Sharp, and Vaughn's been with Nash for a little bit. So yeah, that much. I think that covers most of the injury stuff. But
yeah, I think the surprising aspect of last night is Patty Mills only 6 minutes. Cam Thomas DNP coach's decision in a game where there's no Ben Simmons, no Seth Curry. You'd expect the guard minutes to be a little elevated from the bench guys just to cover some of those minutes. And instead you get Joe Harris season high, Kyrie Irving season high. I'm interested to see tonight that the rotations have been very fluid with Brooklyn, but I'm interested to see tonight if either of those guys. I don't know if I think part of this coaching change, when a coaching change does happen, will be involved with Cam Thomas playing some, because him playing none is strange for a team that needs some more upside. But yeah, that's the thing that I'm a little bit nervous on, and I'm not entirely buying. Once they confirm that Joe Harris is playing, I'll believe it, essentially. Like when they say he's in the lineup, I just think it's really strange tact for them to raise his minutes limit, get him up to 29, and then still have him play in a back-to-back. But they're obviously desperate. Desperate times call for desperate measures when you can barely eke out a win against Indiana at home out of the two games.
Yep.
So.
And he talked about Nick Claxton being quote much improved, and again, like just the comments, he's like, oh yeah, he was taking some teaching moments. Like, look, I want to listen to that presser again, not because I listened to it like probably 30 minutes before the news came, and it was just funny to think about how he spoke. It's like he knew it was coming, and it just felt like this was never going to end well, so he kind of led in the open there.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to who the Nets play in the Chicago Bulls. Their questionable tag, we've got Ayo Dosunmu. Got Zach LaVine, who intends to play tonight. The Bulls are on a front end of a back-to-back, I believe. So he tends to play tonight, sit tomorrow is the expectation. Mm-hmm. Kobe White is also on the injury report with a questionable tag. And, of course, they're still without Lonzo Ball. And then Andre Drummond, who left last game. We saw in that game the Bulls did not go to a traditional backup center in Tony Bradley. Mm-hmm. They ended up choosing to play more of the fours where they have, I don't want to say depth, because I don't think they have, it's the old, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one type situation, but they have Derek Jones Jr., Javonte Green, and Patrick Williams, who all saw their minutes kind of tick up in the absence of Andre Drummond. Against the Nets, another matchup that you can do that pretty easily, right? Mm-hmm. Even Claxton's not a super big threat in terms of size. It's just kind of keeping him off the boards and athleticism, which someone like Derek Jones Jr. could do. And then the backup center spot for the Nets, obviously they have not been playing Daron Sharp. Mm-hmm. So I would expect it to be elevated minutes again for Derek Jones Jr., Javonte Green, and Patrick Williams, with a little bit of a hot hand in terms of where those minutes go. Any other notes there? This was also a game without Ayo Dosunmu, which you saw slid Alex Caruso into the starting lineup, and his minutes picked up quite a bit as well.
Yeah, Ayo kind of said he's feeling better, and he didn't really feel the pain. He felt like the pain in his head at first. So sounds like he's going to go. Kobe just a thigh contusion, so it sounds like he's going to go too. Obviously not a huge impact with LaVine there. Had LaVine not been playing, that would have been a horse of a different color or a bull of a different color. But yeah, it sounds like we should get them. I would expect them to be a game time for Ayo, but yeah, all indications so far are that he should return from this one. And I think the back-to-back factor was probably a big reason why he missed some time.
What are your thoughts on Patrick Williams, Derek Jones Jr., Javonte Green in terms of, I assume you think that they're going to fill the Andre Drummond role, but what do you think in terms of minutes expectation? Williams played a little bit better last time out. It seems like he's been a little bit more active as a screener and pick and roll stuff, and a little bit more active defensively. What are your thoughts? Because obviously he's been a focal point of the Bulls' developmental plans the last year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, well, one, they love Derek Jones Jr. with Dragic from their time in Miami. That's been a staple of Donovan's rotation, which I think they're going to lean into even more now because they kind of have to. So, yeah, he doesn't have to compete with him as much. That means, the minute ceiling should be higher. We saw the 32. So he's probably competing with just Javonte Green for those minutes at the 4. And it's a matchup you'd think they would want to use him against Durant. That's the kind of player he's supposed to guard. So yeah. I think it sets up pretty well for him. Don't feel great about the overall ceiling because they've used Javonte Green in that role too. So yeah, could go south pretty quickly, but definitely feel better than where it was, where he was getting the start and then almost never getting a second sub per half. So she should definitely get that role, like at worst case.
The other surprising thing I'll note from this box score, just looking through, is no Ayo Dosunmu, and Goran Dragic got stuck down at 13 minutes. Usually he's been in the upper teens. Is that a concern with Dosunmu coming back? Is there any risk that, like I guess where we haven't had them with all their guards super healthy this season, right? So Dosunmu, LaVine, Caruso, Goran Dragic, Kobe White. That's 5 guards. Typically you have 4. Is there a chance we get an odd man out situation here where someone like Goran Dragic falls completely out of the rotation?
I don't think so, especially with I mentioned the Derek Jones Jr. stuff, but I think him getting pushed down was largely matchup based. Going against the Sixers scoring guards, right? You'd want to lean more into Caruso probably more than you're used to. So I would expect him, not to get too many minutes there. Obviously, Ayo could squeeze him, but I think there'll be just a little bit of minutes. You're not looking for him for fantasy, but I think that's probably why his minutes didn't get elevated.
Okay, let's go to Orlando, where Cole Anthony is going to be out for some time, but Jalen Suggs is questionable on the injury report with the chance to return tonight. we've seen Bol play really, really well in that starting lineup. It hasn't resulted in wins necessarily for Orlando. They went 1-1 in this 2-game stretch since they've been without Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs. But I thought they've played really well. The one win was kind of a blowout win over Charlotte, who's played very, very well the rest of the season, right? Outside of that one game against Orlando. And then they played Dallas pretty tough. Ultimately, Luka was too much in that one. But you see Bol there, 30 minutes, 16 points, 11 boards, 3 blocks. He was a featured player on Friday's show last week with Justin Fan, where we talked about him in depth. If Jalen Suggs is able to return, do you think Bol is back on the bench, or do you think it's a situation where Suggs or Terrence Ross could move to the bench and keep Bol in the starting lineup?
I think they'll put him in RJ's spot to start this out. We saw him return from knee injury, and they kind of limited him, given it's obviously 2 different injuries with the ankle and the knee. But I think that's a way to keep his minutes in check and keep the continuity of this lineup that's been pretty good for them early on, as they're still really, really, really shorthanded in guard. So playing that big lineup kind of lets you scale back on using guard minutes overall. So I think that's kind of the plan. So I would expect him to essentially slide into RJ Hampton's minutes. And then probably boot RJ out if he can go. I haven't heard very much. I've listened to Mosley's practice and didn't get much info there. So probably going to be game time. We'll find more out as we move closer to tip time. But we may not get that information.
If Suggs was to start, let's say they made the decision that Suggs was moving into the starting lineup, who do you think is more vulnerable between Bol and Terrence Ross for moving back to the bench?
I think Bol. Sadly. You need the floor spacing with Ross. That's just a pretty funky fit. But I would say Bol's probably would be moving back to the bench. They seem to like Ross in that first unit.
Yeah. I really, really hope there's a runway for Bol to stay. I just think I think it's a really interesting lineup with the length that they can throw out there. But yeah, we'll see. Suggs, he's been hurt so much throughout his start of his young NBA career, and it seems like when they bring him back, they tend to manage on the front end, but we'll see if that's the case again tonight. Okay, Minnesota, Kyle Anderson and Jordan McLaughlin are both questionable. Their availability tonight against Phoenix, Kyle Anderson's been in and out of the lineup with injury issues early on to start the season. What are your thoughts here on their availability?
Sounded like McLaughlin's going to be back based on Chris Finch's comments and talking about how much they missed him and they want him back ASAP because they're just so messy on every aspect of the game. So I'd expect him to be back. Kyle Anderson's been getting closer for a while too. So it sounds like those guys have a little shot to play here. Although there was some mention from Finch saying they wanted to lean more into the Naz Reid minutes. You'll see here in plus 12 and 9 minutes. It was their best lineup for when they were playing the Spurs. So maybe they don't bring him back. So again, bottom line is I think McLaughlin's a little bit more likely than Slow-Mo based on what Vince was saying and how they are missing him and should be back soon.
Okay. They are playing Phoenix. Phoenix has DeAndre Ayton still out. Torrey Craig is also on the injury report listed as questionable. What are your thoughts on Torrey Craig's availability for tonight?
I don't have a strong read on that one, but I think they're going to really need him. Getting more size against Cat. We've seen teams use guys like Torrey Craig or more traditional fours guard him. So we'll see. Probably game time, but if they don't have him, they'll probably turn to Okogie for a little bit. Cam Johnson's minutes have finally started to elevate. Some comments from Monty Williams saying how it's taking him some time to grow into the starting role and being on team scouting reports and all that stuff. And also, a quick side note we'll talk more about on DFS show, getting the ball more into Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson's hands as screeners and as ball handlers. So that's something we could talk about more later with Ayton out. They're going to need more than just Booker and CP3 to produce on offense.
We saw in that matchup against Houston a team that can play a little bit smaller in the second unit. Minnesota has a lot of different ways to go, but generally they're staggering Cat and Gobert. So generally it's a true big in that second unit. Biyombo and Landale. Landale was really, really hot in this game, 6 for 9 from the field, 16-7, and a steal and a block to go with it. We saw them combine for 45 minutes. Do you think they combine for the full 48, or do you think we still see some of these smaller ball Phoenix lineups, and does that depend entirely on the health of Torrey Craig?
Yeah, a little bit on Craig. Matchup, right? And you're going to run into a lot of big guys on this end, not so much in the Houston spot, although Shingun has played very, very large as far as just his impact and size on the game. But yeah, I think those minutes are pretty safe. The Biombo stuff, huge, huge spot for him. They're going to need him in a big way. So I would say it's, over. I'd probably set the over under at like 44.5 or something minutes for true centers.
Okay. Yeah, I think the question mark there is just, do you project the full 48 or do you project a little bit lighter? The other thing we still haven't seen, and if Torrey Craig was out, I'd be interested to see if we see it. Dario Saric, we haven't seen this season yet. And if Torrey Craig was out, I don't know, Josh Okogie might be the next guy they go to. What are your thoughts there in terms of where they would go next if Torrey Craig was unable to go?
Yeah, probably Okogie. Kind of similar for a bigger wing who can guard the ball. I think they like them. There's similar skill sets defensively, so I think that makes sense. And yeah, no revenge game for Dario Saric either. So that's sad, but yeah, he's out of it, man. So yeah, I think you said if Craig's in, and plus you got to factor Biombo, foul prone, Landale sometimes. So we probably can't project full 48 just because the foul risk on those big guys. But it should be pretty close. If things go well, it should be really close to 48.
That makes sense. Heard Dario went up to Monty and was begging for playing time and said, "It's me, it's Dario."
No.
Okay, let's get on to new outs and doubtful. OKC is listing guys out today.
Yeah.
Josh Giddey is out. Our boy Lindy Waters from the Upper West Side and Jalen are also Jalen Williams. The J Dub, right, is the nickname that they're going
J
with.
Will. I think
J Will.
J
J-Dub.
Yeah.
J-Dub is the good Jalen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I need to get squared away with all these nicknames from Oklahoma City.
It's bad.
So J Will is on G League assignment. What are your thoughts on Oklahoma City tonight? I guess J-Dub will be highlighted here.
Yeah, returned over the weekend. Justin Fans guy. Never got a chance to draft him. Mark Dagnall said after the game that he was surprised to see his conditioning in the shape it was. So expect him to play pretty good minutes here. And again, the headline and why we're talking about this is all these names being out is lovely because we can actually not have to project 18 guys. We saw Isaiah Joe make a big impact in the last game. So keep an eye on him. Mark Dagnall talked to him before the game saying, hey, be ready. I'm going to use you without you even knowing about it. So yeah, just to pull this rotation up, we're getting a better feel. And that thinned out front court is impactful for namely Darius Bazley, who got the Luka assignment in the non-Dort minutes, not very many of them. Dort played 40. And we saw Poku's minutes get there. Wiggins
that looks like a little bit more like a normal NBA rotation.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is nice to see.
So we can actually talk about these guys on the injury show. Sorry, on the DFS show later today. So
yeah, and I will say to give credit where credit is due, I think the Thunder look a lot more like a professional NBA basketball team so far this year. It always helps when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, my guy, is available because he's so freaking good offensively that it allows all the other pieces to kind of fall into place. But they have a lot of length on this team, and they can be very disruptive in passing lanes, and they're very active hands, and they gave Dallas a lot of problems with that. It did make me dream a little bit about what things could have looked like this season if Chet Holmgren was available in terms of just all the length and chaos they could create defensively with Shai, with Lou Dort, with Chet Holmgren, with guys like Aaron Wiggins and Pokusevski. Like, these guys are long. There's a lot of disruption and athleticism on the floor. And I think OKC might be one of these teams that is benefiting. We talked about this a lot in episode, I think it's 221 of the Established Run NBA podcast, where we're of the belief that younger teams that are more athletic are benefiting early in the season from this transition foul rule by just getting more free breaks at transition and not having to execute in the half court. And I think that's happening with OKC a little bit. And I think as long as they have Shai to make for relatively stabilized, efficient offense, they're a little bit dangerous night in and night out, because defensively, I actually think they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
This year, I think they're going to be pretty good defensively this year, which is not something we have seen. We've always wanted to attack OKC because they give up a lot of steals and blocks. They're very poorly organized offensively. They have a lot of guys who do, make a lot of mistakes. When Shai's there and he has the ball in his hands, he doesn't make a ton of mistakes. And so they're then able to set up their defense. They're not getting beat in transition. So I think it's just going to be a tale of two teams this year when Shea is healthy and when Shea is not. But generally, the Thunder individual players are starting to make some nice steps forward from what we've seen during this, which feels like a really long process. It's only been 3 years since they were in the playoffs, but it feels like it's been forever that they've been tanking because of the approach that they've taken.
Yeah, just and Dort's had like 3. I know you always poo-poo the matchup stuff, but Dort has been like he took Norm out, he took PG out of his rhythm. Luka didn't quite pop off.
Yeah,
I mean, so he's been
look at 31, 16, and 10. But,
yeah.
But
He didn't. Well, 8 of 23 from the field. You know,
I know.
Well, after what he did, put 44 on the Magic the next night. So
I know.
It's Luka's just ridiculous.
Luka. What Luka and Giannis are doing to the league this year is just outrageous.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've hit it for all the injury stuff on this mild 4-game slate. There'll be plenty to talk about on tomorrow's. I think it's 12. Is it 12?
It's so many.
Slate?
It's like 12 or 13. I think it's 12. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did all the pressers for this. It took me so long, but it's a monster slate tomorrow.
Yeah,
and then only 2 games on Thursday.
Big slate tomorrow. As a reminder to support the people who support us, this show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money, running in addition to many formats of NFL contests, still running for huge prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers have access to the ETR projections tool to compare our projections to those Pick'em lines up at Underdog Fantasy, and you can play those fantasy games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, make sure to use the promo code ETR at checkout. You can get a $100 deposit bonus match up to the first $100 deposited. So make sure to use that promo code ETR at checkout and get yourself an account over at underdogfantasy.com. Tons of fun, easy way to play DFS from a mobile perspective. You can play daily games, best ball, all the good stuff over at Underdog. All right. That'll do it for this edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. Mike and I will be behind the paywall at 5:30 or 5 o'clock Eastern time tonight, or 5 o'clock from now on. I don't even think the game started at 7:30. I don't know what I'm doing today. 5 o'clock Eastern time is the show today, and every Monday through Friday. We will see you there. If you are an in-season subscriber, we will see you there. If you're not, you can check out the subscribe page and get access to all the information you need to potentially look at DFS packages or player props packages where we continue to blast off. If you are uninterested in subscribing to an in-season content package at Established Run on the premium side, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel on the free side. All it costs you is a click, and it helps us continue to generate this free content for you. If you like the content that you're receiving here, please consider pressing, gently holding down or smashing that like button to feed the algorithm. As always, you got to feed the algorithm to keep us going and keep us in business. Nom, 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow.